A lot of new features headed out the door this last week, and you've probably seen quite a few of them. I took about 20 minutes and I sat down with Adam. Adam's one of our founders, and he worked on the new locks feature with a few of our developers. And so he's gonna kind of walk us through what we were looking to accomplish with the updates that we made to locks, and show us some of those features, and kind of describe what you can do now, and how we've improved locks. So take a look. So let's go through and take a look at what we changed, and maybe you can start out with a little bit of background on what we were hoping to accomplish with this release,
Yeah.
and then we'll take a look at some of the details.
Sure. So there's a couple main areas that sort of inspired redoing the locks platform. One was that a lot of times during implementations, legacy data that people are bringing in will have locks, or sometimes they're called holds already, and they wouldn't necessarily map onto the stuff that we had just sort of built into Populi on a sort of as needed basis as we were building out the system. So there was always kind of something there where it was like, okay, it would be nice if we could tailor these a bit more so when people come on, they could work the way that they're accustomed to in their workflow. Another thing was that we've had a lot of requests for a course lock, which we never had until now. And so looking into, how to solve those things, and given the fact that the lock types that we had were just baked directly in to Populi, like in the areas where that they affected. So there was a system in place, but it didn't allow for flexibility, the kind of flexibility we wanted to be able to have. It made the most sense to just roll a new locks platform, basically, to build it out that way, with more flexibility than we've currently had. And so that, people could just have the ones that they wanted, and they could lock the areas that they wanted, and not, be stuck with the sort of more rigid ones. So that was like the motivation.
And the more flexibility all around, but then specifically with courses, you're talking about the ability to say, all right, for a particular student or a group of students, I want to restrict their access to be able to log into online courses or any course really, and access the course materials. And I think the idea there is that if students haven't completed whatever it is that they need to complete to start the course, or if they're behind on payment, a school wants to be able to say, all right, well, until you make payment or arrange for these other things, you can't continue to log in and take tests and view lessons and that sort of thing.
That's like, that was the biggest, probably single request, was just the ability to restrict course access for whatever reason. But it didn't feel right to build that in the same way that we had the other existing locks, just because we were sort of like, it's just pretty rigid, and people might want it to work differently, and courses obviously have a lot of different pages involved, and so it would have been, we don't like to spend a lot of time building something out in a thing that we know we should be replacing. So it just kind of made more sense to rebuild it.
Okay, great. Well, let's take a look at what we did. So you're on a student profile here.
Yep. Yeah. So one thing that's different. So we'll probably try to cover all the things that are substantively different. But one thing that's different is blocks aren't just sort of baked into particular areas now. They sort of exist on sort of on their own, and they lock different areas. So all the areas that you could lock previously can be locked by any lock. And then we added the ability to lock course access. So that's the new area. But what's different is that instead of, say, if you want to apply a certain lock, you need to know which page it exists on, or pages, and then go there and apply the lock there. You always have this over here, add a lock on the profile, just in the left column. And this will be where you can see all the locks that somebody has. which will look exactly the same as it did before, except now you can actually click on them and see all of the lock reasons and notes, which are new, and also the ability to apply the same lock multiple times is new. So that's why it's all in a dialogue, because there could be any number of reasons and notes from different people about why they applied a lock, and they might say, hey, don't take this off without talking to me, or whatever. So
yeah, and what you're saying too about being able to add multiple locks is important, because previously you could apply one lock, but schools end up in situations where two different departments or they need to lock a student's grades for two different reasons, and the student needs to actually take care of whatever those two issues are. So you might fulfill one of those, remove one lock, but there's still a second lock, and so they need to go and yeah,
absolutely. And now you have the option to do that with one lock type, we call them. So you could have two people or two departments applying the exact same lock, or you could actually have a second lock which locked the same thing or overlapping things with a different name. So you can have as many, whatever makes sense for you. When this went live, what we did was we had an import script that turned all of your existing locks into new locks, but now they're actually existing in a granular, per school basis. So we can change the name for you. We can change the permissions on them. We can change which areas they lock, all that kind of stuff. So depending on what makes sense for your workflows, your processes, you can set it up however you like. So yeah, you can use redundant locks. You can have multiple locks of the same type, whatever. So yeah, to add a lock, you just click add a lock over here. You can choose a type. These are the ones that you're going to have by default. Any of these could be renamed, removed, modified to lock different areas or to be available to different roles. You can also make lock types available to a student's advisor. That's like a special permission.
So those are in settings.
Those are just things that we would set for you. So you would just contact support.
Gotcha.
There isn't an interface on that because it was sort of built out as like an implementation thing in terms of them being custom. So when we onboard somebody, like custom discipline is this way. Like we onboard somebody, we can just make what they have, fit as well as we can into our system. But if you're an existing customer, just holler at support and we'll make a tweak for you. And because for the most part, I kind of think this is kind of a setup and leave it type of thing.
I don't know whether anyone,
That's why we added course locks, because so many people requested it. We figured probably most people would like to have it, or a lot of people would. But if you don't, we can take it away.
So with the tweaks that you're talking about, they can, if they contact us, we could potentially rename a lock, and we can even change exactly what is locked with some of these.
Yeah, any of them. There's a number of areas, and it's in the knowledge base. I'm sure that if you look at the blog posts or announcements that we've done, it's all linked there. But there are all the previously existing areas like grades, transcript, registration, charge to account, and you could also lock courses now. One of the things that's cool, which you would actually have to make a tweak to do, but grades, transcript were both bundled together. So grades locks in progress grades, assignments, and in progress course grades that are unfinalized. And the transcript locks your ability as a student to export your own unofficial transcripts. Those have always been bundled together as one lock, but they're not necessarily, you might not consider them to be the same thing. You might want just a grades lock or just a transcript lock, or one that also does both. So right now they're still bundled together because we left everything alone. But if you wanted just the transcript lock, we could change it. So that's cool. Like if you, for whatever reason, you want to lock, they can't export their unofficial transcript, but you don't have a problem with them seeing their grades. So that's a nice upgrade.
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
This is the add a lock dialog. And what's nice is this dialog is called up anywhere that you can add a lock, which would be the profile. And there are some areas in Populi where you can add locks in bulk, like the advising tab. So yeah, you just choose whichever one you want, and you write your reason down in here. That's your reason. And then this is something that we added that's new, is the internal note. And we have little descriptions in here that explain, you can see these, but the internal note is just so you can write a note to other staff members if you, for whatever reason, something that you don't want it to show to the person who is locked, probably a student. They can see the lock reason, but the internal note is withheld from them. So you can, put secret stuff in here.
Yeah. And then
so
the
anyway,
best place.
Save this.
Yeah. At this point, you mentioned the advising tab is one place where you can apply locks in bulk. I think you can apply locks in bulk from Data Slicer.
Yeah, and you can, yeah.
Are those the best places to report on? Is probably Data Slicer is the best place if someone wants to go run a report to get all the kind of a summary of who's on which lock?
Yeah, so that's something that's come up is you can filter on lock type, whether somebody or whether anybody, students in the Data Slicer have or do not have a particular lock type. So say you wanted to, so some common use case would be a lot of schools will lock everyone's registration, and then everybody talks to their advisor and figures out what courses they're going to take, and then they remove all the registration locks. It might be done individually, but if you wanted to, put a registration lock on hundreds of people and then remove a registration lock, a week later or whenever, you could do that by Data Slicer. Yeah, by just filtering on who has this lock and then running action. So that's pretty handy. Yeah, so now the lock shows up, the course is locked, and being able to click on this is new, and you can see the reason and the note. We've got a little drop down here for editing or removing. And then we have a link here for remove all locks of this type. So let's say if we added another course lock, and both of these fields are optional. You can just put a lock on, you don't have to. You see, so there's still a course lock, but now there's more than one. And we can just click this and I'll ask you, sure you want to take all these away? Sure, and they go away. So that way, we thought it would be annoying if you had 4 of them on there to have to click edit, remove, edit, remove.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's stick one, let's put some locks on this person and on me, I guess, and see what they look like. If that sounds good.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I've put the grades and transcripts. You see right now they just show up here. But if you go over to the student tab, you're probably familiar with this banner. We've sort of repurposed it. Previously, a banner like this would show up in particular areas if you had a lock applied. So, if we had a grades transcript lock, we'd say, hey, that's kind of student-y. And so it would just show up generally on the students tab. And it would say, hey, you've got a grades transcript lock. And it would just print the reason out because you could only have one. You could only have one of the lock, and so one reason field. So now the banner shows up contextually based on if it could be affecting something in that particular area. So see here that we've got the transcript is locked. So the transcript is a lock area, what we're calling it. It's not a lock type. So since we're looking at the transcript tab, it says the transcript is locked by following locks. And I applied a financial lock and a grades transcript lock, both of which lock this. And then you can click on these and see the reasons. If we flip over to my student profile and I look at, I'm on my course, let's go to my profile and I look at my student tab. So this is the student's view. I can see also the same locks over here. I can see them here and I can click and get the reason. I don't have obviously any of the edit controls, but I can see that I have that lock applied, and that's why I can't export my transcript. And likewise over here, I can't see my grade for this course because I have both of these are locking grades as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great.
So here you can see, you know, that student has a B, but I can't see it because of this.
Yeah.
And if we go, so we applied a course lock to the student as well. So if I try to go to the course, the course access is restricted. It says course access locked by the following locks courses. And then the course access is restricted down to the level that it's restricted to anyone who isn't enrolled in the course. That's just a sort of student user, or, you know, somebody without administrative privileges. So you can see the info tab with the general info about the course, and you can see the calendar. So it's pretty obvious you're not going to be able to get into lessons or assignments or anything like that. So yeah, so that's the general, you know, how those work. And then you might like to see what that looks like in a sort of bulk setting. Gonna get advising to load up. Here we go. So on advising, previously we had this registration lock column, which is still there. But now registration can be locked by multiple locks. Technically it could before also. The financial lock locked registration previously and still does by default unless you change it. But it would just say yes or no, whether you had a registration lock. So let's select a couple people and apply some locks to them. So if we apply, exactly, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's the gist. Trying to think if there's stuff that we didn't cover in terms of why or what.
No, that's great.
I think that's
people have questions, they can get in contact with us via Populi support, and we can answer questions there. But yeah, no, thanks for showing, and this looks like it's going to be great.